Hi, everyone. Welcome to Khan Academy's Daily Homeroom live stream. For those of y'all who do not know what this is something that we thought of when we started seeing mass school closures, and we know that people are going to be at home socially distanced. And obviously, Khan Academy, we saw ourselves as, it's our duty to step up in this time of closures. A lot of our resources are the way that many of y'all might be able to keep learning or have your children or your students keep learning. But we've also been trying to do other supports. We thought it'd be just fun to have a synchronous way to have interesting conversations between ourselves, to bring on interesting guests from all over the world on all sorts of topics. I am doing an interesting experiment today that we should all have a growth mindset about things. I have my phone leaned against my computer right over here so that I can simultaneously do this on Instagram. So normally we have some technology that Felipe has found that allows us to do this on Facebook and YouTube simultaneously, but now we have added Instagram. So I'm saying hi to all of the folks on Instagram as well. So today's topic is going to be really interesting. It's going to be graduation and life advice. And you can almost view this as like a interactive graduation address, which is frankly better than, just me sitting at a podium and giving you something that you might not remember for the next 20 minutes. But before we break into the Q&A, but start thinking of those life advice questions that you would like. And we have team members. I'm going to be looking at the Instagram, and then our team members are going to be helping me out with YouTube and Facebook. I do want to give a special thanks to several corporations that have stepped up over the last several weeks, especially with the COVID crisis. Khan Academy is a not-for-profit. We can only exist because of philanthropic donations from folks like yourself and from corporations and foundations. And folks like Bank of America, Google.org, AT&T, Fastly, and Novartis have stepped up just in the last few months when they realized that our costs were going even higher because our usage, our server costs, our usage is about 2.5, 3x of what it typically is. We're trying to accelerate all sorts of programs forward. So thank you to all of them. And once again, if you're in a position to donate, every dollar matters. It helps us. It shows a show of confidence. It helps us reach that many more folks who otherwise would not be able to have access to some form of a free world-class education, or teachers who would not have access to tools like this. So with that, I would love to take any questions that you have. And I already see a couple of questions. Oh, actually, it looks like my team is also scanning Instagram. So this is super helpful for me. So from Instagram, at SRG_19 asks, what is your favorite memory from high school? You're taking me back. All right, let me see. I don't know if it's my favorite memory, but I could probably think of some memories. I remember there was a day I was in student council, and we were, in student council in high school, you paint those, those pep rally type banners and stuff. And there was, someone had forgot to close the yellow paint. And I kind of wanted to make a point that, like, when you don't close the yellow paint all dries up. And so I was like, look, this is all dry. And I did this, and I was like, look how dry it is. And then it wasn't dry. And so the yellow paint, that was a good memory. It helped me to take myself a little less seriously. It was the universe was conspiring to keep me from being too self-righteous. Let's see, other great memories from high school. I mean, there's great memories. I remember we went on a camping trip my senior year. That was great. We kind of got lost. So it's always those memories where it's a little bit of an adventure. That's nice. There's some things I cringe at. Some of you all may or may not know that, when I did give the graduation address at my high school graduation, and I was a little bit angsty. I was also, by my senior year, I was not in a band, but my sophomore year, I was a lead singer in a heavy metal band. And so I had that little angst in me. And so at graduation, I felt the need, and I cringe a little bit about it now, but I guess it is a memory, to kind of make a statement. So the morning of graduation, a friend and myself, we actually snuck into the auditorium where the graduation was going to happen, and we put a guitar under the diploma table. And so when I went up to give a speech, I said, I think it would be better if I sang this. And so I took the guitar out from underneath the diploma table. I still remember the look on my principal's face. It was just like horror, and frankly, half the crowd. And I sang. So that's I cringe on it now. I wouldn't do that today, and I wouldn't recommend it today. But it was novel. So I'll try to think of more and more memories as we go through this session. But that's a good question. So from Instagram, at Lean Marvelous asks, how old were you when you realized that helping others to learn was a passion of yours? Great question, Lean Marvelous. And if you see me looking back and forth, I'm looking at my computer screen and I'm looking at the Instagram screen so that I'm, making eye contact with everyone. So I realized I really enjoyed tutoring folks. It was actually around that same time in high school. And actually, that even jogged some other really great memories. But it might not surprise folks that I was the captain or the president of the math club. In high school, it was called Mu Alpha Theta. I don't know if that's a thing where you go to high school, but as part of it, we wanted to do service, and we figured a valuable service would be to tutor our peers. And so we used to do this after school tutoring thing for our peers, and a lot of kids actually showed up for it. And it was then that I realized that if you give anyone one-on-one attention, give them a chance to fill in their gaps, that they're really capable of learning, almost anything. And I saw before my eyes a lot of my friends, or even people I didn't know, who were C students, who thought they weren't good at math. When they just got a little bit of attention, they were able to catch up and do whatever they needed to do. So that was the first time I realized I really enjoyed it. Then when I was in college, I did a little bit of that as well. There was a local school had budget cuts, and so they needed some more, I guess you could say, volunteer teachers or teacher assistants. And so myself and my roommate, we went and volunteered. This was in Brookline, Massachusetts, and really enjoyed it. I realized that I had no classroom management skills. a lot of you teachers can appreciate how important that is. I didn't at the time. And, there were moments where I had some fifth graders, standing on top of a table, and I had to spend a little bit more time than I'd like telling them to get off. But, I realized that was intriguing to me. And I think it was after my junior year, I got a fellowship to work on software. I had applied for it, work on educational software for students with attention deficit disorder. It was called an Elaranta Fellowship at my undergrad. And that was the first time I started writing some software and seeing if this could be of help to folks. And then, the life took over, pragmatism took over, and graduating from college, I had a reasonable amount of debt, and I said I need to make some money, maybe help out the family a little bit. So I went into tech, which I also enjoy. My background, my undergraduate degrees were in math and computer science, and many of y'all know the story. I then go to business school. I become a hedge fund analyst, but then while that was happening, my cousins needed help, and so it kind of kindled that same joy for the subject matter and for being able to help folks, especially family members. And so that's what got me on the track. And that, the more I did it, the more that I saw gains in my cousins and other folks that I knew. And frankly, the more that I got letters from random people on the internet saying that it was helping them, the more I think, I don't think there's anything special about me. I think anyone would find that incredibly rewarding. And it was a little bit addictive. You start to realize how much more joyful that is when you get a letter from someone in Indonesia saying that you helped them, get back to going to college, versus you get a slightly larger bonus at your at your hedge fund job. You realize that maybe this is what you could do for a living. So it was just I guess you could say signs that were showing up in my life throughout, and at some point you just have to pay attention to those signs. They keep trying to make themselves a little bit more visible. So let's see, from Instagram, a lot of questions from Instagram. We should do this more regularly. That have both live streamed all of the above. Andy Chavez, it disappeared, said, "How do you learn from failure?" There it goes. How do you learn from failure? So I think the first step is to just recognize that the failure is not a judgment on you. I think so many times we confuse ourselves with our thoughts, with our labels that society is putting on, and things like grades, or you failed, or you didn't. That's kind of a label or some extrinsic thing that happens to you. And to realize that's not yourself, and to realize that those are the moments of growth. The very fact that you're failing is a good sign. It's a sign that you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. You're not just kind of resting on your laurels. And if you reflect on that failure, and I recently met a teacher who likes to use the phrase "fail forward." So if you reflect on that failure and you say, okay, what can I learn from it so that maybe next time I try, I have a little bit lower chance of at least failing in that way, then I'm making progress. That's how you grow as a human being. And, this mystery that we all live in called life, and it is really a mystery, uh, you know, all I can think of the best thing to do is to just keep on going, keep on growing, keep on failing, and keep on learning from that. And when you do that, and actually when you learn, when you see that you can get onto the other side of failure even once, I think it was we had Alberto Carvalho, who's superintendent of Miami-Dade. He said something about that. The first time that you do something a little bit scary and you even fail a little bit, but then you power through it and you realize that you can get to the other side of it. That's when you realize that's a muscle. And then next time when you see an obstacle and you see the failure, you're like, well, it's just going to be like last time. Sure, I might try a little bit, I might fail a little bit, but I just have to keep chipping away at that thing. And before I know it, I'm gonna be able to get through it. So that's the best advice. And actually, there's a ton of research on that those who are willing to embrace failure, those who are willing to step out of their comfort zone and learn from it, who define themselves not by the outcome, by success or failure, but who define themselves by, hey, I'm someone who's always willing to try. I'm someone who's always willing to do the hard thing. Those are the people who do really well in life, without fail. I guess not to overuse the word. So let's see. From Instagram, it's me Shreyash asks, "How was your graduation day?" So actually, I've had several graduation days, high school and then undergrad, and then from business school. I would say, I've already described my high school graduation a little bit. I have to say, graduation days have been unusually eventful for me. So when I was in college, I was my senior class president at MIT. And so I was on the commencement committee. And at the time, the president of the United States was Bill Clinton. And so you can imagine when we used to have our meetings for the commencement committee, this was, in November of my senior year, this was in 1997, we had these meetings like, who should we invite for commencement? And the previous year, Al Gore had spoken. And so, I was just like, why don't we invite the president of the United States? Just thinking, why not? See if the president will show up. And, the vice president showed up the year before. And I remember President Vest, who was the president of MIT at the time, said, Sal, first of all, there's no way the president's going to show up. Second of all, it's a bit of a pain with the security and all the logistics. And even though the vice president was pretty tough, the president would be even harder. So anyway, I'm like, all right, so we actually did invite, and that year's Time Man of the Year was someone by the name of David Ho, who helped develop some of the antivirals that helped kind of cure AIDS. So big deal. Time Man of the Year was our commencement speaker. I was excited about that. And so you fast forward to about, I think it was like 3 days before commencement. And I get an email from President Vest saying, Sal, are you okay with this? And it was a forward from the White House. And it said, President Clinton would like to give a major speech or whatever on the digital divide at MIT's commencement. And he's inviting himself to be the commencement speaker. And so I just responded back. I was like, yeah, I'm cool with this. And so he ended up being our commencement speaker with like a few days notice. And then it was literally, well, no, it was more than that. It was now that I remember, that email was actually probably about a month before commencement, because obviously all of the logistics. And then the night before commencement was actually when I got the other email from President Vest saying, are you okay with this? And it said that President Clinton has some time and might be coming an hour early and would like to meet with a few student leaders. And so this was just one of these random things where it was like me and 6 other student leaders. We got to spend an hour with the president of the United States when we, right before our graduation. And, regardless of your political affiliation, regardless of anything, it's a pretty heady experience if you're 21 years old, it's your graduation day, and the president of the United States wants to hang out with you before graduation for an hour. And it really was kind of like hanging out. It was really weird. In a good way. It was, because you normally think these people are, some kind, you don't realize they're people too. So it was a fascinating conversation. And then, right when we were all like getting out of the door, ready to go line up for commencement, President Clinton says, I think I have a little bit of time after my speech. I would like to give a couple of student leaders their diplomas. And so he kind of he gave, I gave my little, 2-minute speech as class president. Then President Clinton gave his digital device speech. And then David Ho gave his speech. So we had two commencement speakers. And then President Clinton gave me and three other people our diplomas. And then he got on his helicopter and left. So that was, I was like, wow, how did that happen? It was definitely a powerful experience for me. And once again, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, regardless of anything, when you're young and you realize that there's these people who are very influential in the world, that they are still human beings and that you can connect with them and talk to them. It did open my aperture. It did make me think, okay, wow, maybe this is a world in which I too might have something to contribute. So you can't discount something like that. So that was a very powerful experience. So let's see. Instagram K Ando, how did you feel right after graduating from college? So this is an interesting question. I actually, there's a little bit of excitement that you're graduating from college, that all those problem sets and deadlines and all of those things, that kind of college academic rat race is a little bit over. But I have to, in hindsight, I realized it was sad, because so much of your identity, your friendships, they're all at college. And I was excited. I was going to move out to California for a job. My first job was going to be a product manager at Oracle. And I was excited about that. But I didn't know anyone out in Northern California. And so, when I came out here, I have to admit, it was tough. I tell a lot of folks that first year out of college, going to a place where I didn't know anyone, I didn't have any really, good friends. I spent a lot of nights just hanging out at the Barnes and Nobles, reading books for free. That was kind of my social life. It wasn't the best year for me. It was a tough year. And that slowly, what happened was I had a lot of friends who we were with, and I'd finished my degree a little bit early. So I came out a year earlier. And so when more of my friends came out the next year, then it started to get a little bit better. But that first year out of college, I think it can be a little bit jarring, because I was fortunate. I had a good job. I had a good boss. I had good coworkers, but it's still not the same thing as what you get when you're, in the dorm room, pontificating things, doing silly things that you do in college. Still, when I get together with my college friends, we reminisce about a lot of the silliness that happened in college. So yeah, it was tough, but then slowly but surely it got better as more and more friends, and I met new people. And it is all about keeping an open mind to things, to new people, and then not just, grieving for what you might have lost. And then, but I was eager to go back to business school, because business school had a little bit of that element as well. Just a sense of community, et cetera, et cetera. And then, after business school, by that point, I had a fiance, so I was feeling less lonely. And so I post business school, life felt pretty good. And then she married me. So Instagram, Aiden Jafarova says, what do you wish you would have known when you graduated from high school? I think, I was a reasonably, I'm fundamentally an introverted person. Like, if I go to a big dinner party, and I'll enjoy it, but then I like to come home and just decompress and have quiet time for myself. That's when I re-energize. And even when I went to college, and actually in high school as well, I always did have the mindset that, hey, I want to step out of my comfort zone. I want to try new things. I want to try to meet new people and be open to things. But I think especially in high school, and to a lesser degree in college, but especially in high school, it's very easy to get into your head and saying, oh, well, they probably wouldn't be interested in hanging out, or, they're in that crowd, I'm in this crowd, we're friendly, but we wouldn't really, we really wouldn't get a lot from each other. And I think that's a mistake. I think you actually have the chance to get the most from the folks in your high school and in your college that are different from you. And what I now realize in hindsight, and I've met many of these people now that we're, adults, and everyone has those same insecurities. Everyone. I don't care who it is. It could be the the captain of the football team, the homecoming king, queen. Everyone's oftentimes, some of them will have more of those insecurities because they're afraid, their identity is so defined by some of these things, these external things. And so I think if you're an open person who's genuinely interested in other people, uh, you can form deeper connections with anyone, and they will appreciate it. And even on first cut, they might be even a little bit weirded out. I mean, you don't do things that are truly scary or anything, but if you're like, hey, do you need anything? Hey, I want to help you. Hey, tell me about your family. At first, people are like, why are people asking? Why is he interested in me? But then people are like, oh, well, you want to know? I'll tell you. And I think those deep connections are super powerful. I think another thing that I wish I knew better in high school is that, it's easy to treat your teachers as kind of teachers and only teachers. And I did form, I would say a friendship with a handful of teachers. Mr. Hernandez, Miss Kennedy are the ones in high school that definitely come to mind that I could talk to about things. And they would talk to me about, stuff. It was really powerful. They treated me more like a peer, and obviously sometimes they had to play teacher and I was the student, but a lot of times there was a nice camaraderie between us. But I think, for other times, it was very easy to say, oh, so-and-so, that teacher is like this. They like to fail students and they're like that. And in hindsight, I realized how wrong it is, because 99.9999% of the teachers that I had, and that I'm sure you have, their number one priority was to try to prepare you for the world and make you a better human being. And I wish, as I told you the story of me bringing a guitar to graduation. And so you can imagine every now and then I wasn't probably the easiest student to have in your classroom. And so one of the things I wish I did was also, for even some of the teachers that I felt weren't aligned with my worldview, I wish that I had reached out to them more and figured out how ways I could support them, and also tell them how much what they did meant to me and to our peers, and how much we grew from it. I have to say, even some of those, we have every you always have your favorites, and then you have those teachers that are like, oh, they're so hard and they're just trying to stick it to us. But I got to tell you, when you're 40, 42, 43 years old, like myself, I get together with friends. I was like, we learned a lot in that class. And so teacher really, by kind of being hard on us, kind of prepared us for life. So those are some of the things that I wish I had known, and to just know that it all works out. It really all works out. That everything that you stress about in the moment, usually a week later, a month later, for sure, a year later, you won't even remember what that thing was that you were worried about. And I still remind myself that, because every now and then I do have something where I wake up in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh, why is that happening? And why? And then I remind myself, is Sal, you've gone through this like 500 times now. It's not going to matter. It's not going to matter in the long run. Just do what you can. Be an open person. Be an optimistic person. And the universe will hopefully give you back some of that optimism and openness as well. And things will resolve themselves. So those are some of the things. So, some of the stress was unnecessary, and some of the anxiety and some of the insecurities. In fact, all of it was unnecessary. I wish I'd meditated. I picked that up about two years ago. I wish I had started even 10 minutes a day, because then all the stuff that I just talked about it would have just, it's like Rain-X for your soul. Things just beat up and fall off. They don't absorb into your mind. From Instagram, Louisa Montavani asks, hi Sal, what are tips to decide what you want to study in university? So my advice is, don't stereotype yourself too much. I think it's very easy for us, sometimes we get a little positive feedback from one teacher or another in one subject or another, and saying, oh, I'm a writer, or I'm a programmer, or I'm a math person. And they say, I'm going to be a writer, or I'm going to be an art historian because of that feedback. And that might be the case. And those might all be great fields. But I think, it depends where you're going to the US, where you go to school. But in the US, there's a lot of opportunity to try things, especially your freshman year. So I would take courses in a pretty varied thing. I would, the other thing I wish I knew is a lot of professors don't mind it. I used to think, hey, there's 200 kids in this room. The professor has no interest talking to me, but I wish I had at least tried. And sometimes I did talk to the professor in smaller classes, but in those large classes, I was always like, oh, I'm just going to go do my thing. They don't, but oftentimes you could talk to them, especially if you're genuinely interested. There's some students who are not genuinely interested and they're just trying to kind of suck up to the professor to maybe get an A. But there are also students who are genuinely interested. And if you are genuinely interested in the course and the subject matter, the professor will probably want to talk to you and might even have an internship for you or have advice about it for you. And so I would do that. I would talk to as many people. I would talk to as many upperclassmen as you can find, ask them as many questions, especially the upperclassmen, the seniors who are getting jobs. Ask sometimes, a little bit sensitive questions. How much are you getting paid? What is the job offer? What does the job market look like in that major? And then if you can get a hold of alums, people who graduated the last few years, because it's sometimes the work that you do in the major is different than the work that you do in the job. And so talk to the alums who majored in X and say, okay, you got a job. It doesn't hurt to ask them, how much money did you get paid? How hard do you have to work? What's, all of that. But then ask, what is the actual work like? What surprised you about it? What didn't surprise you about that work? And you'll learn a lot. I have to say, if there's one thing that, and I didn't do it well early on, but by my junior and senior year in college, and for sure my second year in business school, that's what I did. I was very shameless. I remember I really enjoyed a capital markets class, which is all about the stock market and the bond market and how money moves through the world. And it was a pretty math heavy class. And in business school, I went to business school. I went out at HBS. It wasn't the math. A lot of students didn't go super deep in the math. And so I oftentimes was the closer, so to speak, where the professor would say, Sal, how do we solve this equation? And so I had a good relationship with that professor. His name was George Chaco. And I said, George, I love this class. What can I do in life that is like this class? And he said, well, you should go work at a hedge fund. And I said, that sounds awesome. What is a hedge fund? And then he explained it's like a mutual fund, but they can do more exotic things. They have more flexibility in how they invest, but they're regulated differently. So I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then I looked at all my classmates who had worked in finance, and then I started going to that. I was like, what's a hedge fund? How much do you get paid? What's the lifestyle like? And I was like, oh, this sounds good, at least to me. And then I started going through the job search process. So that wasn't picking the major, but I was picking kind of the career. But the same process is true on the major side. Just ask a ton of questions. Don't be afraid to ask about money. Sometimes on university campuses, money can kind of be viewed as a little bit of a gauche side. Oh, we're academics. How dare you talk about career and money? No, talk about money. Money for sure isn't everything in life, but you need to be able to put food on the table, support yourself, pay off your debt. If you're not able to do that kind of stuff, you're not going to be able to do the high-minded stuff. So I'm not saying you have to become a millionaire or even have to become, affluent, but it's super important to think about, am I picking a major that I have a decent chance of getting a job that I enjoy, not just tolerate, but I can enjoy, and I can pay off my debt and have a reasonable chance of, saving for a down payment on a house, and one day, and being able to go on vacations, and if I choose to have a family, to send my kids to college in the future. So I don't think it's ever too early to think about that. All right, so these are great. Maybe we'll do another one of these. Whenever we don't have a guest, maybe this will be graduation season, because I'm, I don't know if y'all, I'm enjoying playing Uncle Sal right now. So this is. So YouTube First Guy Gomez asks, what would you have done differently if you could start college over again? It's the same, and I'll finish on this because I just realized I think I do have a call that I can't reschedule starting like a minute ago. If I could start college over again, it's the same advice that I said. I would be that much more open. I would be, if I'm thinking, if someone has helped me, if they mean something to me, I would have told them that. I would have stepped out of my comfort zone that much more. And I did step out of my comfort zone. When I was my freshman year in college, I intentionally joined the improv comedy troupe because I was like, there's nothing like stepping out of your comfort zone like improv comedy. And we had to travel around from school to school, and people would shout out a noun, a verb, a setting, and context, and you'd have to kind of act it out and try to be somewhat humorous. So there's nothing like improv comedy that will teach you to be out of your comfort zone. But I would have done more of that, and I would have I would have been more open with my thoughts, my emotions, my insecurities, because that's the type of thing that forms the deeper connections, the deeper friendships. And I came out of college with great friendships, and I feel very fortunate for it. I met my wife in college, but I think there could have been even more. And even to this day, I probably once a month I probably have a dream about college where I'm in one of these circumstances. A lot of it's like the end of the term and I forgot to drop a class, and I'm like, oh my god, whatever. But anyway. Thanks everyone for being part of this. I think this kind of worked out, doing the Instagram and the Facebook and YouTube at the same time. And I just want to thank everyone for joining this. And I'm going to go jump onto that call now. See, how do I turn this?